All right. Okay. I know you guys don't need this microphone, but just to let you all know, we are recording because live streaming this for some people who couldn't be here in person. Um, but welcome to LSE and Admission Secrets Revealed. I hope this is a helpful evening for all of you who are thinking about taking the GMAT, thinking about applying to LSE Department of Management or any other department here. Just to run you through the agenda, my name is Lauren. I'm marketing manager for the Department of Management, and I'm going to just quickly talk about some of the programs we offer here in the department. Then Erasmus will talk about the GMAT exam and some tips for that. Then we'll hear from Kate from LSE Admissions about application advice. Then you'll have some time for Q&A and networking and have some food and refreshments afterwards. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Oh, and my colleague Faisal Khan is with all of you who are currently tuning in online. All right, so just a little bit about management at LSE. We are not a traditional business school, and we approach business and management just a little bit differently. So because we are housed in a social science institution, we take a very holistic view of business. How does it fit into the geopolitical context? What are the further impacts of business decisions? All of those are the kinds of things that our course teaching take into account to really give you a broad perspective. It's quite theory-based, but then also there are lots of opportunities to apply that knowledge during your program. Rankings, we're #1 in the UK for research in business. We have some great faculty doing amazing research here. That's always really interesting to be a part of. We're #5 in the world for our reputation with employers. As you might guess, LSE students go on to do pretty great things. There are also quite a few programs that and some support for social entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in setting up your own venture, there's lots of opportunities to do that. And then we have an extensive alumni network. And we have an alumni team within the department that especially helps to connect students with management alumni in London and around the world at networking events, lectures, things like that. So our master's programs, we have 8 master's programs, and then we have 2 executive master's programs. These 3 are our more general management, so you'll cover human resources, a bit of marketing, a bit of finance. The first is a 1-year master's in management. It's an accelerated course and it goes through the summer, so you graduate kind of ready to take that leap into management. The second one is a 2-year master's in management, and it incorporates a semester abroad if you choose. So you can spend that term studying in the US at an MBA business school, or with our SEMS Global Alliance partner, or you can choose to specialize for a term at LSE in a particular field. And then we have Executive Global Masters in Management. It's 17 months and it's modular, so you come to campus part-time, 2 weeks at a time over those 17 months. Then these are 2 of our more specialized economics management programs, Management and Strategy and Economics and Management. So economics and management, if it requires a background in economics, but you're looking to maybe apply that in a different field that's related to management. Management and Strategy, if you have a background in management or engineering or something like that, and you are interested in learning more about economics and how to apply that, then that's probably the program for you. And then our last 4 specialist programs are MSc in Marketing, management of information systems and digital innovation, human resources and organizations, which has 3 different streams depending on your interest area, and then the Masters in Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship for anyone who's kind of interested in the social lens of business. And we also have one more executive program that's not on here. It's the Executive Masters in Social Business and Entrepreneurship through the Marshall Institute. So that's if you are at an executive level and looking at, are interested in the relationship between business and philanthropy. So we do have GMAT requirements. These are it's required for all applicants for management and strategy, and then certain non-UAK institutions might require it for these degrees. In general, we would encourage you to use GMAT score in your application, just kind of strengthens that. If you have, do you have any questions about the programs right now? I can address them. Otherwise, we can talk about it in the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, welcome from my side as well. The next 20 minutes I will run through all the important things about the GMAT, and then later on we will have an FAQ where you can ask me all kind of questions. Maybe to get a quick overview, the people in the room, is anyone already preparing for the GMAT, or has he making it all quite new? Okay, so okay, this will be quite helpful, I hope. So why is the GMAT important? How is the GMAT exam structured? Facts about the GMAT exam, and the last point, probably quite important for most of you, how best to prepare for the GMAT exam. First, I want to give a quick introduction about the Grant Management Admission Council. That's the organization behind the GMAT exam. We were founded 60 years ago by the world's leading business schools, and they all had a common problem. They had applications from a lot of students all over the world, great students, but they didn't really have a tool to compare all of the students. That's why the business schools came up with the GMAT exam, to have a tool to assess the academic potential of candidates and also be able to compare them across the globe. So it works quite well, and we did a lot since then. So we're also doing a lot of research to help universities to find great students that fit into their classrooms, and also to help students to assess and find business programs that suit their needs. So the first slide, it says full control. A lot of you are already studying in your bachelor's, maybe you finished your undergrad already, maybe you have some work experience. So some of these factors you can't really influence anymore. But the GMAT, if you start preparing now, you can really get a good score and influence a very big part or an important part of the application. So instead of seeing it as a burden, maybe you can see it as a chance of really starting fresh with one piece of the application and getting a great score. So I already said GMAT is valued by a lot of business schools around the world, and you can see some numbers here. It's trusted and accepted by 6,000, I think actually now it's more than 7,000 programs all over the world, and it really measures the skills that are in demand by the employers and also the skills you will need in business school. So if you prepare for the GMAT exam, you're already preparing for school, working on the case studies, or for your job later on, hopefully, so you should feel confident. And finally, you're not really alone when you prepare for the GMAT exam. There are roughly 200,000 other students that take the GMAT every year. Test centers are all over the world. We have more than 600 locations, and it's used in more than 110 countries. Now, even though this presentation is about the GMAT is only one part of the whole application. I think Kate will probably talk a bit more about the other requirements later, but GMAT doesn't assess leadership skills, motivation, job skills. And even though the GMAT is in English, globally the same exam, it's not a language exam. So you might need to do an additional language test, write a motivational letter. The GMAT exam is only one part of the whole. I've already talked about the value for schools, but for candidates, you can really stand out with a good GMAT score. So the admissions officers see a lot of GMAT scores every year, and they know it's not easy to get a really good one. So that's one benefit for candidates. You can maybe also compensate for a weaker bachelor's degree, or undergrad degree. It opens doors to some of the best business schools and management programs in the world. And sometimes the GMAT is also part of scholarships criteria. So a good GMAT score can even help getting some financial support. And as I mentioned before, the GMAT is designed to prepare you for business school and assess your academic potential. So if you prepare for the GMAT, you should feel comfortable about being prepared for business school as well. And here are 2 points why schools value it. You can assess the academic potential and compare you across the whole candidate pool. So for those of you not familiar with the GMAT, this is the structure here, and I just see, unfortunately, some of the numbers are a bit out of date, but the 4 sections are still the same. It's analytical writing, integrated reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and verbal reasoning. Now, what has changed since this year in April is that the quantitative and the verbal section are a bit shorter. They're 62 and 65 minutes, I believe, and have a few fewer questions. But the structure is still kind of the same, and the total score is also between 200 and 800. Now you can take the GMAT in 3 different orders. The first one is the original order on slide number 1, and then you can also choose to start with the verbal part or start with the quantitative part. We often get the question if there's one order that's better than the other, and it's really very individual and up to the test taker. Some candidates have like a warm-up effect. They might want to start with something that's a bit easier to them, so they warm up when they get to the difficult parts. Others are more affected by being tired later on in the test, so for them it might make sense to start with something they feel is difficult and keep the easier parts for later. So here are a couple of things that are tested and why these parts are on the GMAT exam. The writing assessment, business school, as well as on your job. You always need to write clearly and effectively. You need to write reports. You need to analyze arguments. So that's what's being tested in the writing assessment. Integrated reasoning is all about analyzing data. You get different data sets. You need to draw conclusions, and especially nowadays with big data, a keyword, very important. Quantitative reasoning is a little bit a math section. It's problem solving, data sufficiency. So again, if you work in business schools on case studies or later in your job, you will always work on problems. And being able to solve those is very important. I guess a lot of you are already studying. You know, you have to read a lot and evaluate what's important, what's not important, draw conclusions. So verbal reasoning is also very important. Now the GMAT, see the slides are not rendering perfectly here, but it's tailor-made for every one of you. You will start with a medium difficulty question, and depending on whether or not your answer is correct or wrong, the next question will be a bit more difficult or a bit easier. That way the exam will find the level of the test taker and give you a pretty accurate score at the end. And to make all that work, you cannot skip questions, you can't go back and correct something. And it's very important that you answer every single question. So if you run out of time, you will get penalized and your score can drop at the end. So it's really important that time management is being practiced when you prepare for the GMAT. Let's come to a couple of logistical slides. You can register on gmat.com. You can search for test centers. There are quite a few around. And availability is usually quite good. So we're testing all year round. It's not just that we have like 2 time windows per year. And recommend to look around 30 to 60 days in advance to find a test date and location that suits you well. You can see there's like a calendar. You can always go and check availability and see which dates are left. The cost of the GMAT exam is $250 each time you test. You can test up to 5 times within a 12-month period and up to 8 times a lifetime. We hope no one needs that many attempts to get to their target score, but you have a couple of tries in case you have an off day and want to retake it. And you have to wait 16 days to retake the exam. and the exam is valid for 5 years. So if you're currently an undergrad, you're thinking about doing a master's later on, it might make sense to take the GMAT exam now or when you have time to study. Once you're maybe in the workplace and you have long days, it's a lot harder to study for the GMAT after work and on weekends. So you have time now to take the GMAT. It's good for 5 years, and you can apply in 2 or 3 years after you got some work experience, after you took your gap year, whatever your plans are. You can choose 5 programs and send the GMAT score to those 5 programs. That's included in the GMAT exam, and you make the choice at the beginning. So best to arrive at the test center with a choice of 5 programs where you think you want to apply. You can add schools later, but that's an online process, and it occurs a fee. So the 5 programs are included in the initial testing fee. So it's good to have a short list ready. So the GMAT is always like a high stakes exam, gets you into great business schools. So there are a couple of security measures in place. You need to bring an ID document. There will be a signature and a digital photo. And there are a couple of rules what you can take into the test center or not. So I would really recommend to download the handbook and read through all the rules and show up at the test center well prepared. The official score is sent within 20 days. It's usually quicker, but just to the safe side, if you're thinking about the university or program application deadline, make sure you schedule the GMAT exam well in advance. So you have at least the 20 days until the official score is being sent. And if you had an off day, maybe also calculate the 16 days you need to wait until you take the exam again. So don't schedule the exam date too close to the application deadline. Now, except for the writing assessment, the writing assessment, integrated reasoning, verbal and quant, all multiple choice. So the computer can give you your score right after the test. And then you can decide whether or not you want to send that score to the schools or if you want to cancel it. If you cancel it, the schools won't see that you took the exam. So it gives you a bit of security. And now we also have a cancel window within 72 hours online, but there occurs a fee. So the best strategy is to arrive at the test center with a target score and already think about which score do you want to cancel and which one you want to keep. And from my experience, when I talk to schools, and I'm sure Kate will mention something later, if you have 2 GMAT scores, it's probably not the end of the world. If you see the first score wasn't really up to your expectations, you took it again, and then you really got a great score. It's not a problem. If you start seeing 4 or 5 scores showing up, schools might wonder why you had to retake the exam so many times, but don't worry too much about 2 attempts. To make it even more complicated, if you cancel a score, you can even also reinstate it up to 4 years and 11 months. So these are not really things we want a lot of candidates to do. Cancel, reinstate are just options that are available in very special cases. If you decide to take the GMAT again, there is something called the Enhanced Score Report. You can get that to analyze your first GMAT exam and get quite detailed analytics about your first attempt. It shows you the different sections, how you compare to other test takers around the world, how much time you spent on the different categories, just to analyze your performance a bit better and know where to target your further preparation. That's the keyword preparation. You can see different regions have different approaches when it comes to the hours spent on preparation, but I can tell you the Asian average GMAT scores in this one are also quite higher than the US average GMAT scores. And as you can see on the left, it's really the more you practice, the better your score usually gets. It's not an IQ test that, however often you take it, it should kind of give you the same IQ. It really comes with the preparation, and it's very important to get used to the types of questions and also the time management I mentioned earlier. So we have a couple of study aids available. There is a GMAT prep software that's for free, and that's basically a must-have. You can take 2 GMAT exam at home for free. It has the same algorithm as the real exam, so it gets tougher if you answer correctly. And then we have a couple of guides you can see at the top. They are just books. They're also available as ebooks, and they give you a big volume of questions so you can practice. So that's the software. It also offers the select section order, so you can test out which order might be the best for you. And you can purchase additional exam packs if the 2 free exams are not enough. Finally, the official guides, what I didn't mention, are also available online. So you get same questions in an online question bank. So you can access, you don't have to go through the thick book on your desk. You can also access them online, build question sets, practice sets, and they will give you some basic analytics of your preparation as well. And then finally, GMAT.com is the webpage where you register for the exam. But there are also a lot of other application tips, alumni reviews, and talking about their experience in the master's program, how they applied, how they got in. So we have video bloggers. So it's probably worth going there and have a look. It might help you. At this point, I would usually open for questions, but I'm not sure if we want to postpone those until the FAQ at the end. Are there any burning questions right now? Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to choose the 5 programs now, but you can already choose the schools you want to send them. It's usually not a problem. We don't send like a physical letter. Usually schools can access the scores online. And if you apply next year, they will just look at the scores next year, and it's valid for 5 years. So that shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Sorry? No, you unfortunately don't get bonus points if you still have some times left. It's only if you don't get to the questions, you get penalized because those questions are not answered. Yeah. Yeah, the official guide, they have some information about the criteria, how they are assessed. And there are some example essays that show you how much points different essays obtain, so you can compare your essay to those. Otherwise, it would be good to compare with like a study friend, both compare your essays and help each other.
Okay, hi guys. My name's Kate. I work in graduate admissions. I look at a lot of graduate applications every year. I work on some of the management programs, but not all of them. So I'm not a specialist for all of the programs. But I'm going to try and give you some general advice and some do's and don'ts really for each element of your application as you're going through it. So there are 5 parts to your application, your personal statement, or actually we've changed that to the statement of academic interest because we feel like that is a more accurate description of what it actually should be. So apologies, I forgot to update that. But then the CV and previous experience, the transcripts and previous study, your references, and then your GRE or GMAT scores where those are requested by the course. So as far as statements of academic interest go, that is exactly what they should be. A statement of why you are interested in the course that you are applying for. A lot of the best personal statements that I see explain why they've chosen this particular course at this particular institution. They demonstrate academic and critical engagement with the subject, so you know what you're going to study, you know what that course includes, and you've really thought in an academic sense about what that means, why you're interested in it. You've maybe demonstrated that you've done some academic work or some reading around the subject ahead of writing your personal statement. You maybe engage with some reading that you have done and say why you find it particularly interesting or what you would like to learn further about that subject or how you might approach some of the different elements of the course that you're applying for. Generally, we would like statements that stay between about 1,000 and 1,500 words. A very short statement, it can be difficult to get across your academic interests and be persuasive in that way. A very long statement can become rambling and lose focus on what you're actually trying to tell us. For programs that have, some of the programs have very specific questions. So social innovation and entrepreneurship, for example, has specific questions you need to answer. You need to answer those questions and not give a standard statement of academic interest. You know, there's a reason why the selectors have asked for those questions, and they want to know your answers to them. Disappointing personal statements are not proofread, and so you see mistakes that maybe should have been picked up on rereading, or indeed are proofread, clearly proofread by maybe somebody else who has left track changes on the document, and then you can see all their comments as well. So please check your document before you upload it to make sure that if you have had somebody help you out with it, which is absolutely fine, I'd recommend getting someone else to read it. But if they have put track changes on there with their comments, please, you know, remove them. And disappointing personal statements are really generic, and they don't talk about the course specifically. We understand that you may be applying for 5, 6, 7, 10 graduate programs, and that's absolutely fine, but take the time to look at the specifics of our course and our institution and say why you would like to come to this course. It's a very popular starting point, and we understand that it can be really hard to start your statement, but please don't start with a quote. We have seen them all, and many of them many times a day sometimes. So we know that it's difficult to start, and maybe put a quote to inspire yourself, but don't leave it in the final draft. Disappointing statements also often include a narrative of your life story. We have your transcripts, we have your CV, we can see the pertinent elements of your life story. I want to see your academic interest and your academic preparedness for this program. And maybe there are pertinent elements of your personal history that are really relevant to the course. Bring out their relevance, talk about them concisely, but don't give me a life history. Also things like listing modules completed, listing internships. There are other parts of the forms that you can better use to demonstrate that experience and that interest. So try and avoid those pitfalls in your statement. So your CV and your work experience. The importance of these varies between different programs, but sometimes I will see CVs that someone obviously hasn't spent much time thinking about in what ways their experience may be relevant. But we do look at your CV and we do look at the experience that you've got, and we do take into account those bits of information. And like I said, it's a useful place where you can put achievements and experience that maybe doesn't fit precisely into your personal statement, or you don't want to use that space. Put them into your CV and we'll look at them and we'll see that experience and understand its relevance to the course. As I say, great CVs are clear and unfussy. There are a lot of different CV templates available out there. Some of them are very imaginative. A clear, simple CV is sufficient that shows me when you did things, how they were relevant to the course you're applying for, and what you learnt or what you would like to explore that you would like to develop on through this course. And this is where sort of being tailored to this purpose comes in. So again, we understand you're applying for internships and jobs and graduate programs, but try and take the time to just tailor it to the program to show the relevance of what you've done and where you've been. And concise, like 2 sides, stick to the relevant details. You may well be very proud of the bronze Duke of Edinburgh Award that you got in year 9. And that is great, but it's not necessarily relevant to your graduate application. Disappointing CVs have pictures, and I know there's a debate on this, but from my perspective, we work very hard to eliminate any unconscious bias from our selection, and having a picture just invites that. And we would like to judge you on your achievements, on your potential, on your Experience, we don't need to see a picture, it's a waste of space on the page. And again, listing positions without relevant details. So tell me how long you were there. Tell me what you did that's of relevance. Tell me the things that were really exciting or interesting to you in that experience. Give me the relevant details that I need to know. So transcript and previous study. What we need to see from your transcripts is what you have studied through your undergraduate or any previous postgraduate qualifications. And this includes the modules that you studied and the module grades that you got. We look at your transcript as a whole. We will look at all of your grades. We will maybe pay slightly more attention to grades in modules that are more relevant to the program you're applying to. But we will look at all your grades from your first year through to your final year, and we'd like to see all of that information. Some courses have specific requirements for previous study, and other courses will look for grades. All courses will look for grades in relevant modules and for progression. So we look, you might have had a hard time settling in the first year, and there might be some dodgy grades there. That's fine. Show us that you progressed and you've worked hard and you've figured out what you're doing. Show us that you are continuing to work hard and giving that upward trajectory as you finish your undergraduate course. So, references. This is potentially the part of the form where maybe you have you may feel like you have less influence, but there are some really important things that you can do to make sure your references are the best possible references that they can be. So particularly if you are coming straight from an undergraduate degree or another postgraduate qualification, if you have been in education recently, your referees should be academic referees. And we would advocate for those to be both of your referees. If you've been in employment for some time, then a professional referee may well be the right choice. But where possible, we would recommend academic referees. And this may sound obvious, but great referees know you and know who you are. It may be that your most relevant module was a class with 300 other people and you didn't have a seminar with your teacher. That potentially is not the best referee for you. It might be the most relevant module, but if they can't say something about you as an individual, if they don't necessarily quite know who you were, that's not the best referee. The best referee is someone who has seen you, who has talked to you, who has seen your potential, and who you have had conversations of an academic nature with, and they can give you the most comprehensive, the best referees for us, and the most informative references for us. If they have taught you in relevant modules and subjects, that's great. Maybe the lecturer you've had the most interaction with is an arts lecturer, and that's great. But make sure your other lecturer is your other referee is maybe from a subject that shows the same skills as you will need in the course that you're applying for. So a social science type course to give us an idea of that you have the skills required to be successful in the course you're applying for. The other thing is make sure that they've seen your application materials. Show them your statement, show them your CV, show them what you're showing us, and then they can, that can mean that sometimes they pull out pertinent facts from your personal statement or from your CV, and they will highlight those to us if they feel that they're pertinent. And that's where we know that that applicant has worked hard and worked with the referee, and that referee is prepared to spend that time for that student. They know the student well enough that they can put in that time to review that information and write you the best reference possible. On professional referees, we understand that many of our students come from a professional background, haven't been in education for some time. If you are maybe less than 5 years out of education, it is worth getting in touch with an academic referee. They may well be able to offer you a reference. They might need a reminder of your work or what they taught you in or some of that stuff, but that can still be useful. But if you are working particularly in a pertinent field, if you've been doing professional work, by all means, send us professional references. again, show them your application materials, talk to them about the course you're applying for, talk to them about maybe what skills you know that you've demonstrated through your work that you're going to translate into your study here. So by all means, give them something to work with to create the reference that's most relevant for the course that you're applying for. So GRE and GMAT scores. So several of our programs require these. Some of our programs say that you're more than free to add in GRE or GMAT scores to any course you apply to, and they will be looked at. If they're not required, you don't have to do them, and please feel free not to complete the test if you wouldn't otherwise do so. But if you're applying for another institution that requires it and you have them and you're proud of them, please put them in. So the Global Masters of Management, the Management and Strategy courses all require GRE or GMAT. And the how important question is the same for every element of the application that I've just spoken about. No one part of your application will guarantee you an offer. No one part of your application will guarantee a reject. We look at every single application holistically as a whole. We look at all the elements of an application to create a holistic decision. And thus, all elements of your application are important, but no element of your application is going to rule you out like that. We look at every part of your application to make a holistic decision. So they are important for these programs, but they're not, no one part of your application is the be all and end all. I asked a colleague who works on these programs, and the information she gave me about scores is that it varies between courses of what the average is, but generally somewhere between 680 and 700 is a total score around the average. We would generally look for applicants to be depending on the course and depending on other elements of your application, in the top 10 to 25%. So you get a percentile score as well as a raw score on both the GRE and the GMAT. And so we're looking for students that are in the top 10 to 25% of within both tests and within the different areas of the test. And so speaking about the different sections of the test, the quantitative score is important, but we do look at all of the other elements as well. I have seen tests where someone is in the 97th percentile on the quantitative, and then the 10th percentile, is that the right way around? Yeah, on other elements. And yes, we want to know that you have the quantitative skills, but that maybe causes a bit of concern when there's real unevenness across the sections. So do take into account that all of those sections will be looked at and do have an influence on how we look at your application and how we look at those scores. So overall, we would really encourage you to do your research about the courses. There is huge amounts of information available on the website. The management department are excellent at giving you the information that you need in order to have all those nuances, all those bits that you need to make the correct choice when you're choosing your potential graduate programs, but also for you to be able to be clear on your interests and what you're applying for and why you're applying for it. Make sure you complete all elements of the application. So if you submit your application, but you don't include your GRE or GMAT scores, and they are required, your application will not get past my office. No selector will see it. It won't go anywhere until those scores are uploaded. And that goes the same for other elements of the application. If we're missing a bit of the application or it's not right, it doesn't get seen by anyone. So do please check through your materials, make sure everything's uploaded, and that way it gets processed, it gets sent to the selector, and they can make that decision as quickly as possible without having to send things back to you and ask for things and it gets delayed. And that is important because we have a rolling deadline on our courses. So our courses close when they are full. And when they are full varies year to year. So I can't give you a date. I know within the school in general, some of our courses close in January, some of our courses close in June. So there's a big gap there, and you really want to be among the first to be considered, if at all possible. So if you're thinking about timing, you're here, that's great. You're obviously thinking about it early, and then I would be aiming for before Christmas. It's going to be your best time to apply, if at all possible. Proofread, check, and double check. All we know about you is what's in your application. And so please take the time to check everything you send us and make sure that it presents the best view of you and the best possible, so that we get the best possible impression of who you are and what your potential is. Avoid including irrelevant or superfluous information. So you have the opportunity when submitting your form to us to add one additional document. Now, I have seen things in there that include swimming certificates. I have seen a list of every module that's been taken, even though it's already on the transcript. I've seen photographs. I've seen people's entire dissertations. There's a vast range of all of that, and unless it is specifically relevant to the course and why you believe you should be given a place, I would avoid putting it in. I can see a rationale for putting in an essay or your dissertation. I can see why someone might do that, but you have to remember that we, as selectors, see a vast number of applications. If you want to include some relevant work, give me the introduction or the conclusion of an essay and talk about it in your statement of academic interest. At the most, I have to be honest, I will not read your dissertation if you include it in your application form. I don't have time, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's very interesting though. So yeah, all programs are selected and closed on a rolling deadline. So this goes back to early applications. That is a great approach. And then use LSE for you to check the progress of your application. Once you submit it, it goes through a range of processes and a range of checking, and it goes to selectors, might be read by various people, and then go back to graduate admissions for checking if you receive an offer, etc. Those stages are updated on LSE for you, and if you do email us or call us, all we are doing is looking at LSE for you and telling you what's written there. So you have that information. You have access to all the information that we have about the progress of your application. So use that to check it. And you know, if it's been 4 months and you haven't heard anything, please do give us a call because something's gone wrong somewhere. We aim to turn around your application, I believe, within 2 months. And the reason that may be slightly longer than some other places is that a human being will read every section of the application that you send in. We at the LSE read every section of your application. If you're getting a turnaround on an application within a day, you may want to question whether that institution is doing the same. But the reason it takes us time is that we look at every section, we read everything you send us, and we carefully consider you as a holistic student because we value the students that we come here. We want the best, and we want to give the best service to you in our admissions, so that it takes time to get through all the applications that were sent. And I think that's everything. The only thing that I would say just one more time is that no one element of your application will get you an offer. No one element will get you a reject. We want to see the whole person. We want to see the interest, the passion, the engagement with your subject. And we want to see all of the information that is pertinent and relevant to why we should give you an offer. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Does anyone have questions for Kate? And I'll pass the microphone around so everyone online can hear you.
do we have to take the GMAT before submitting the application, or can we take the GMAT after and just?
If the program you are applying for requires the GMAT, you must take it before submitting your application, because that's an integral part of considering your application holistically. So yeah, you would need to do that beforehand.
And if I just want to have the GMAT to give me, to stand out from the other applicants, can I just say that I will take them later? And
so once your application is submitted, it is sent straight to the selector. And so if you do that, it may well be that the selector has already looked at your application before you send in your GMAT. So, I mean, I would say if it's not required and you're not taking it for another, like I say, if you're taking it for another course and you have those scores and they come in after you've submitted, by all means send them to us. We would try and attach them to your form so that the selector could see it before they made a decision. But if this was the only program you were applying for and we didn't directly ask for a GR or GMAT, then I would focus on the other elements of your application. Just on that note, something that I hadn't mentioned is that in terms of English language tests and English language scores, those do not need to be done before you submit your application. So you can submit your application without confirmed English language scores. You need to prove that you reach our English language requirement by the time you register. So students registering this week, they need to prove that they've reached their English language score now. You do not need to do that for the application process.
Thank you. Specifically for the MIM course, I was under the impression that you don't have to submit a GMAT or GRE if you've got an undergraduate degree from the UK.
Yes, that's the case.
Sure.
So as I said, I'm not an expert in those courses, but I believe that that's the case. Yes. I mean, I can confirm with management and they can send a follow-up, but I believe, yeah, UK institutions are exempt.
If you have an offer from LSE, and can you decide or ask LSE if you could take the course a year later, like defer your application somehow?
So we do have the facility for a deferral. So if you have your offer, you can request to defer. Whether that request is agreed depends on a bunch of factors, including the reasons why. If you know from the beginning that you will not be taking up that place until the following academic year, I'd recommend just waiting until the following academic year.
What would you consider to be a good additional document?
Sorry,
what would you consider to be a good additional document?
That's a really interesting question. I have to say that I have everything I need from the documents that we require. That's why we require them. I'm trying to think of an additional document that I've thought, wow, I'm really glad I saw that. I mean, there are sometimes interesting ones with, like I had an applicant who was a journalist and he attached one of his articles. I'm not sure that it changed my decision, but it was interesting. It was a quiet time of the year, so I had time to look at it. But that has stumped me. I'm not like I say, I have everything I need to make a decision in the materials that we require. Unless you have something that you think it is vital that I see, then I wouldn't worry about attaching anything additional.
We have a few questions online.
Yeah, in particular regarding references. So we've got a student who's been in the family business. Is that a conflict of interest or is that fine?
Sorry, who's?
A student's got a family business, and I use that as a reference. Is that?
So this is not uncommon for our students to come from families that have businesses, and we often get some very interesting personal statements that detail their interest. In terms of referees, again, I would highlight that an academic referee is always preferable. In terms of professional references, If your referee is family, I would try and find an alternative who can maybe give a more outwardly unbiased view on that, on you and your performance. It's not that necessarily that reference would be necessarily biased, but it would be, I think it would be preferable to try and find an alternative. In that case, it may be that that might be a useful additional document that you add that in. I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting vast numbers of referees as your additional document. I will flip to the 2 official ones, but if there's something that is really important from that experience, it may be better for the applicant to explain it in their CV or whatever, and by all means say this is a family business. That's really fantastic. But it may be ideal to try and get an alternative referee.
Great. So one more as well. Just quite a logistical question, but if you apply for 2 separate programs at LSE, you submit 2 separate statements, or?
Excellent question. Thanks for that one. This very much depends. If the 2 programs are very, very similar, you may be able to cover them both within one statement. If they are not very similar, then I personally would advise a separate statement for them. This is particularly the case where one of your programs asks for specific questions to be answered. So one of your statements would be those specific questions. Your second choice or your first choice program would have your sort of more standard statement of interest. To put this into context, if we have, for the HR program, we have 3 streams of HR that you could apply for. They are quite similar. The best statements that I read are ones that separate those out for their first and second choice, because it shows that they really understand that which stream they are applying for and why they would want that stream over another stream. So having 2 separate statements does give you the opportunity to be really specific about your interests and your engagement with the specifics of that course. In terms of logistics for uploading that, put them into the same document and upload them as one document, but have clear titles and headings that show which statement is for which course.
My question is regarding the additional documents.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for instance, that you were doing an internship and you actually were able to make a lot of impact within the organization. Mm-hmm. And for instance, you created a draft project for something that will actually materialize. Is that something that you could potentially include?
So I guess I would expect to see maybe a summary of that within your CV. And if it was something truly exceptional and it's an internship, you're also studying, you've got 2 academic referees, maybe the additional document would be an impact document or an impact statement from your supervisor at the internship. But again, I think in many ways that can be summarized within your CV, rather than giving me the actual document. Tell me what you did and why it was really relevant to the course you'd like to study.
Yes, we've got a question as well. Is a 1-month internship, is that too little in terms of experience for reference?
For a reference, ideally we would like referees to know you well and to know your academic potential. If you think that referee is the best possible person to give you a reference, and that you can't think of someone who knows you better to comment on your academic potential and achievements. I mean, and that goes for any referee. If you think that genuinely that person is the best person to summarize your academic or professional experience, then put them in. Again, I reiterate that academic references are preferable, especially if you are still in education and doing your undergraduate.
Can you ask a referee to amend, or can you withdraw a reference once it's submitted?
So when you put in your referees, when you're doing your application form, the referees are actually, I think, the 3rd thing that you do, and you put in their email address and they get a link to upload their reference straight to us. The reason we do it so soon is that sometimes it can take people a while to get them done, which in many ways can be a good thing because it gives them time to speak to you. If, for example, it turns out that that referee doesn't have time, isn't able to, you can go back onto the system and change the referee.
Once it's submitted, though.
Once it's submitted to us, if you really, really didn't want it there, you could get in touch and let us know that you'd like replace it. That will delay your application. If the application has already been sent to the selector, they may have already seen it. So it's the same with adding or removing any documents or changing any documents. As your application is processed as quickly as we possibly can, it is sent to the selector. They may or may not have already seen it. But if we are able to, we will add or remove documents as much as possible. We would, again, recommend that you take care to check all the documents that you upload and to think carefully about who you're requesting references from to try and avoid the delay for you and the, I guess, you know, the extra things for us to do that slow down the processing of everything.
I'm just wondering, is there a preference over GRE or GMAT? Because I've heard that GMAT's obviously more difficult, so perhaps schools view it, they regard it more highly than if you get a really good score on the GRE.
I think I'm just going to reread my colleague's comments. This is almost exactly. So she said, GRE is the most common. GMAT is the most common test. I believe GRE is perceived as more difficult, but we don't know whether that's true or not. So no, we don't perceive them differently. Do the one that works best for you. GMAT is by far the most common, so it's maybe the one we're more familiar with. It's definitely the one that I see more often as well. So yeah.
So about the professional references.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how familiar they are with giving references to academic institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way how you can prepare somebody from a professional context to giving these references in case they have questions, like what do they have to expect in terms of when they get sent a link?
So when they get sent the link, there is some guidance on that on the webpage that supports them and asks them specific questions about what we would like to know. I guess from your part, if you're talking to your boss or a colleague that's writing your reference, I would encourage you to for you to think about what elements of your work are most relevant, where you show the skills that we're looking for, the critical thinking, the engagement with theory, if possible. I know that's not necessarily present in lots of jobs, but think about the skills that we want and the interest in the elements of the course that you have shown in your statement of academic interest, and think about how your boss can maybe give more detail or give corroboration for those facts within the reference. And we do see a fair few professional references. We understand that they are different, but the best ones I see, you can tell that the applicant has discussed with their referee what they're applying for, why they're applying for it, and how they think that they're a good applicant, and their referee then sort of reiterates that within the letter.
Hi, my question is with regards to transcripts.
Mm-hmm.
I did my first degree pretty long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have all the bits of my transcript. It's in bits and pieces, but if you can figure it out as to how much I got, how it worked out, kind of thing. The thing is, I can't go back to my university and ask them for my transcript because they've lost all my records.
Okay. So that's a kind of a, I guess, an individual, but I'll answer the general, and we can maybe have a chat afterwards. But so for transcripts, please try your best to give us all the information that you can. I applied for a course last year and I graduated in 2004, and they were perfectly, my institution here was fine to find my transcript and send it over, no problems. You might have to pay a little bit of money for it, but that's fine. In terms of transcripts, if you receive an offer, you will be required to show us certified or official copies of your documents, and thus, in general, we would need an official copy that we can certify from. So either that's stamped by the university, or I don't work on the confirmations, so I don't know exactly what we need, but I know we need an official copy of that transcript to confirm that everything that you've shown us in your application is legit. So on the application, you can give us, I've seen screenshots from like university internal web systems where people see their own marks. I've seen that and I can use that. I've seen official transcripts. I've seen 16-page transcripts. I've seen 1-page transcripts. As long as it shows me what you've studied, i.e. the title of the module and the grade that you've got, and I can see that it's, you know, more or less official, that's what I'm looking for. But in the end, when you register, you will need a confirmed official copy of that transcript that shows us the same information.
Great. Thank you, Rasmus and Kate. That was awesome. If anyone has any additional questions, you guys will stick around for a little bit and can ask them individually. Otherwise, that concludes the evening. Feel free to network and have some drinks and sandwiches if you'd like to. Thanks. I watched your video from last year. It's really good.
My slides from last year. I sent over some news, but
oh, these are the
yeah.
okay.